Before today's teaching, I want to emphasize 2 points. First, every time you attend a Dharma class, please remember to generate bodhicitta, thinking, I listen to this class for the sake of benefiting all sentient beings. This mindset is crucial, as it represents the first of the 3 supreme methods. Second, make sure to maintain a pure perception. This is not mere lip service. Rather, you should regard the class setting, whether it is the Dharma hall, a layperson's home, or other meditation centers, as the pure land of Padmasambhava, Avalokiteshvara, or Amitabha, and see your Dharma friends as Mahayanists with supreme affinity, Bodhisattvas, or Dakas and Dakinis. Avoid thinking the person next to me is a bad person and that person is not good either, as if everyone else is merely ordinary while you are somehow exceptional. Instead, view the teacher as the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, Padmasambhava, and others. Ultimately, from the perspective of primordial purity, all phenomena are inherently pure. Thus, we are not merely forcing ourselves to see impurity as purity. Please make an effort to maintain this pure perception. If you cannot consistently uphold these 5 aspects of pure perception, at the very least, strive to do so throughout the class. By doing this, the teachings in that class will internalize within you, and the blessings you receive will be significantly different from when you do not have pure perception. This is a profound pith instruction of Vajrayana Buddhism. Some dedicated practitioners can derive immense benefit from participating in just one class. Remember not to forget the 2 points mentioned above when listening to teachings. Now, let's continue with the section on the all-determining quality of actions. Yesterday, we studied the fact that even the Buddha had to experience karmic results. Today, we will discuss cases of arhats. Maudgalyayana possessed incredible miraculous powers among all the Buddha's Shravaka disciples. However, despite these powers, he was killed by the Parivrajaka's due to the effects of his past actions. Here's how it happened. Sariputra, another highly respected disciple, and Maudgalyayana often traveled to different realms, such as hell or the realm of the Pretas, to benefit the beings suffering there. One day, they went to the hell of ultimate torment, where countless beings were enduring the agony of burning. The 2 masters used their miraculous powers to bring rain to hell, providing relief to the tormented beings. On another occasion, while visiting a hell, they encountered a Tirthika teacher named Purnakashyapa, who had been reborn there due to his teachings of wrong views, and was undergoing a multitude of torments, including the sensation of 500 iron plows furrowing his tongue. Purnakasyapa said to them, "Noble masters, when you return to the human realm, please tell my former disciples that their teacher, Purnakasyapa, has been reborn in hell. Please convey my message to them that the path of the Parivrajkas is not the right path. The true path of virtue is found in the teachings of the Sakya Buddha. Our path is a wrong one. They should abandon it and begin following Buddha Shakyamuni. Most importantly, tell them that every time they make offerings at the shrine they built for my bones, it causes molten metal to rain down on me. I beg you, please ask them to stop making those offerings." When Sariputra and Maudgalyayana returned to the human realm, they encountered the Tirthika disciples on their way back. The Tirthikas resented them because the 2 had once been non-Buddhists, but after taking refuge in Buddhism, they inspired many people with their spiritual virtues, significantly undermining the reputation of the Tirthikas' religions. Consequently, the Tirthika disciples said among themselves, "If the 2 monks praise our religion, we'll do nothing. Otherwise, we'll beat them severely." Sariputra arrived first and attempted to convey their teacher's message to the Tirthika disciples. However, due to the absence of the necessary karmic conditions, the Tirthikas paid no attention to what he said. The Tirthika disciples asked Sariputra, Do parivrajaka's possess virtuous deeds similar to those of Shramanas in Buddhism? Sariputra responded with a verse. Parivrajaka's disciples perform no virtuous deeds of Shramanas. Shakyamuni Sangha perform virtuous deeds of Shramanas. If arhats have desires, then there are no ignorant ordinary people. Due to their lack of karmic conditions accumulated from previous lives, the Tirthika disciples failed to grasp Sariputra's message. They even believed he was praising their religion, so they didn't bother him and just let him go. As you can see, any conflict or fight arising from interpersonal communication is linked to past actions. When Maudgalyayana arrived, he asked Sariputra, "Did you deliver Purnakshapa's message to the Tirthikas?" Sariputra replied, "Yes, but they didn't respond." Maudgalyayana said, "If they didn't understand you, I'll go and explain it to them myself." Then he went to tell them what Purnaksha had said. Maudgalyayana told them that their religious path was misguided and that their teacher was suffering in hell. He mentioned that he had witnessed Purnakshapa's torment himself, which was why he was delivering their teacher's message. However, the Tirthikas were furious. They exclaimed, "He is not only insulting us, he is also disrespecting our teacher. Let's beat him." They attacked him, relentlessly pummeling him until he was left bruised, broken, and as fragile as shattered reeds. Maudgalyayana was the best among the Buddha's disciples in using supernatural powers. Until that moment, not even a combined attack from all the forces of the three worlds or the strikes from the Parivrajaka's could harm a single hair on his head. But at that moment, overwhelmed by the consequences of his past actions, he fell like an ordinary person, covered in bruises and injuries. "I couldn't even think about using my magical powers, much less actually use them," he said. Sariputra then gently wrapped him in his robes and carried him away. When King Ajatasattu heard the news, he visited Maudgalyayana with his ministers and entourage. The king became furious upon seeing the great master's wounds and ordered all the Tirthikas arrested and burned to death. Maudgalyayana dissuaded the king, explaining that the beating was the karmic result of his own past actions, so it had nothing to do with the Tirthikas. The king changed his mind and instead expelled the Tirthikas from the country. The king said to Maudgalyayana, "You possess the greatest miraculous powers among all the Buddha's disciples, so why were you beaten so severely by those Tirthikas?" The great master replied with a verse, "Even after 100 kalpas, beings' actions are never lost. When the conditions come together, one must experience the karmic consequences of their own actions." The king commanded the country's skilled doctors to restore the great master's health within a week. Should they fail, their positions and salaries would be forfeited. The king also instructed his ministers to diligently attend to the master, then return to his palace. Then, Maudgalyayana told Sariputra that he would soon enter parinirvana. Sariputra cried out, "We used to study the Tirthikas' religions and later took ordination as Buddhist monks together. We studied the Dharma together and both attained arhathood. If you pass into nirvana, I will follow you." The arhat monk Asaji, who had inspired Maudgalyayana to pursue the Dharma, heard about the incident and paid a visit to Maudgalyayana. Unlike most of us, who would bring a bouquet of flowers to visit a patient, Asaji brought nothing, neither flowers nor cash. Instead, he recited 2 verses. "Neither on a mountain nor in the sea, neither anywhere nor in the sky, there isn't a place that can escape the effect of past actions, which is like our own shadow following us everywhere, and stays nowhere else. Negative and positive actions never disappear. This is said by the Supreme Sublime One." Then Asaji left. For those who've attained a certain state of realization when visiting a Vajra friend in a hospital, you may also recite 2 verses and then leave. This is a Buddhist way. Now, let's talk about those doctors. They were worried they could not meet the king's request within 7 days, so they pleaded with Maudgalyayana, "Dear Venerable Master, please don't die. Otherwise, the king will deprive us of our positions and salaries." Maudgalyayana agreed to help, and he asked the doctors to send a message to the king saying he would go ask for alms in the city 7 days later. Indeed, a week later, Maudgalyayana went to the city, begged for alms here and there, and eventually arrived at the entrance of the palace. The king was very pleased, so he invited Maudgalyayana in and presented offerings to the great master. At this time, Sariputra entered a meditative state to contemplate why Maudgalyayana went asking for alms despite his severe injuries. He discovered that Maudgalyayana intended to pass into parinirvana. Sariputra then approached the Buddha, thinking, "Even hearing about my friend's death would be too painful. How could I bear to watch it happen? Now that he is about to enter parinirvana, I no longer wish to remain in this world either. I will enter parinirvana first." The Buddha knew what Sariputra was thinking about, so he asked him twice if he truly wished to proceed. Sariputra remained resolute, so the Buddha replied, "All things are impermanent. They are subject to birth and cessation. Let it be." Then Sariputra passed away into parinirvana along with 80,000 arhats. Immediately afterward, Maudgalyayana returned to his hometown, delivered teachings, and then passed beyond suffering with 77,000 arhats. This story is not exclusive to Tibetan Buddhism. It is also recorded in the Ksudrakavastu section of the Mulasariyastivada Vinaya, a scripture of pre-sectarian Buddhism. According to this sutra, when the Sangha witnessed Maudgalyayana passing away into parinirvana after being beaten by Tirthakas, they went to ask the Buddha about the cause. The Buddha replied, "Once upon a time, a Brahmin's son married a woman who did not get along well with his mother. The son sided with his wife and became particularly unhappy with his mother. One day when the wife complained about her mother-in-law to the Brahmin's son, he became angry and said, 'If only a strong man could beat my mother,' leaving her as fragile as shattered reeds. As a result, over the next 500 lifetimes, he himself was repeatedly beaten to be as fragile as shattered reeds. Even after becoming the Arhat with the most supernatural powers, he still had to endure the remaining karmic consequences." As you can see, parents are extremely powerful objects of any action. Not to mention a real act of violence against them. Even generating an evil thought or speaking ill of them can lead to terrible karmic results. According to some Buddhist scriptures, Maudgalyayana was a Brahmin's son who gave rise to evil thoughts toward his father, and even spoke harsh words to him in one of his previous lives. Other scriptures also state that Maudgalyayana thought of and spoke harsh words to both his parents, leading to dire karmic effects. I've noticed that the Ksudrakavastu section of the Mulasariyastivada Vinaya mentions that this ill thought was directed toward Maudgalyayana's mother in a past lifetime. When the great Jigme Punsok Rinpoche introduced this story, he also mentioned that the lack of respect toward Maudgalyayana's previous mother resulted in this karmic consequence. Regardless, we should all pay attention to this story. Why? Because within this lifetime, not to mention our numerous previous lives, we may have harbored negative thoughts about our parents. Even worse, some of us may have physically abused our parents. If this is the case, when will we finally be free from the karmic consequences of such actions? If we do not sincerely repent for our wrongdoings now, from the depths of our hearts, the karmic results will be severe. A person may not take this seriously if they do not believe in the principle of cause and effect. But whether they believe it or not, the principle still operates as it does. Once we commit negative actions, we will have no choice but to experience the terrible karmic effects. The Sutra of the Compendium of Essential Teachings says, "Fools have no right views and do not discern sins from merits. Revolving in the cycles of the three worlds, they possess nothing but suffering." Adhering to the principle of cause and effect is crucial in the pursuit of our Dharma studies. Why do I often emphasize it is not your priority to immediately pursue the highest teachings? You should first establish a solid foundation for your practice, as this is of utmost importance. If you have laid a solid foundation through preliminary practices, your practice will remain steady even after 8 or 10 years, or even 20 to 30 years. Conversely, you may receive the highest teaching or practice from a pith instruction within a day or two, or engage in daily debates to seemingly enhance your wisdom. But in the long run, it will be challenging to achieve any tangible progress in your Dharma practice. Therefore, we should begin by establishing a solid foundation through the preliminary practices, particularly through the practice of the principle of cause and effect. It is essential to contemplate this Buddhist story repeatedly. Although it may appear to be a tale from ancient times, as you genuinely embrace the principle of cause and effect, you will recognize the immense merit in performing good deeds for your parents, guru, and sangha. Conversely, if you are disrespectful, unfilial, slanderous, or harmful toward them, and have not purified these negative actions, the corresponding karmic effects will surely manifest. Here is another story. Once in Kashmir, there was a monk named Ravati who had many disciples. He possessed miraculous powers and could see things that others couldn't. One day, he was in a thick forest, dyeing his robes with saffron. Nearby, a man was searching for his lost calf. He noticed smoke rising from the forest and went to investigate. When he found the monk tending to a fire, he asked, "What are you doing?" The monk replied, "I'm dyeing my robes." Curious, the man lifted the lid of the dye pot and looked inside. "It's meat!" he exclaimed. To his surprise, when the monk looked, he also saw meat in the pot instead of dye. The monk didn't steal the calf, but when the karmic effect ripened, he could do nothing about it. The man accused the monk of stealing his calf and took him to the king, saying, "Your Majesty, this monk took my calf. Please punish him." The king then ordered the monk, Ravati, to be thrown into a pit. A few days later, the man's cow found her missing calf on her own. Realizing his mistake, the man returned to the king and said, "Your Majesty, the monk didn't steal my calf after all. Please let him go." But the king became busy and forgot to free Ravati. For 6 months, nothing was done. Then one day, a group of the monk's disciples, who had gained miraculous powers, flew through the air and landed in front of the king. They said, "Ravati is a good and innocent monk." The king went to free the monk, but when he saw how weak and sick Ravati looked, he felt really guilty. "I wanted to come earlier, but I waited too long," the king said. "I've done something very wrong." The monk replied, "It's okay. No harm was done. This is just the effect of my own past actions." The king asked, "What actions?" The monk explained, "In a past life, I was a thief. Once, I stole a calf. When the owner chased me, I ran away and left the calf near a Pratyeka Buddha who was meditating in the forest. The owner caught the Pratyeka Buddha instead and threw him into a pit for 6 days. As the fully matured effect of my action, I've suffered in many lifetimes in the lower realms. The suffering I just experienced in this life was the last of that karmic effect." I found a similar story in the Sutra of the Miscellaneous Treasures of Chinese Buddhism. The storyline is essentially identical, although the time frame varies slightly. What is the story? There was once an arhat named Ravati who had 500 disciples. One day, while he was dyeing his monk's robe, a man nearby was searching for his lost calf. When the man lifted the lid off the cauldron of dye, he found cowhide instead of the monk's robe, beef instead of dyeing herbs, and blood instead of dyeing liquid. The man took the monk to the king, who threw him into a prison pit. For 12 years, the monk was forced to perform menial tasks such as feeding horses and cleaning manure. Ravati's disciples noticed that their guru was missing, so they attempted to use their miraculous powers to locate him, but to no avail. It was not until 12 years later, when Ravati's karmic retribution was finally exhausted, that one of his disciples discovered he was in the king's prison. The disciple hurried to the palace and asked the king to release Ravati. The king sent someone to check on Ravati in prison. However, there was no sign of a monk, only a disheveled man with long hair and a beard. The king relayed this information to the disciple, who then suggested, "Sire, it would be best to announce that all the monks are set free." The king agreed and issued the decree. By that time, Ravati had exhausted the effects of his karma, causing his hair and beard to fall out naturally. He was wearing a monk's robe and ascended into the sky, displaying 18 different forms of clairvoyance and extraordinary abilities. The king was in great awe. He did full prostrations before Ravati and began to confess. Ravati said, "Sire, you did nothing wrong. This was the karmic effect of my own actions." The king asked for details, and Ravati explained, "In a past life, I lost a calf. While searching for it in a forest, I encountered a Pratyeka Buddha, and for a day and a night, I accused him of stealing my calf. Because of this, I have endured numerous lives of suffering in the lower realms. Now that I have attained arhathood, I still have to experience the karmic effect. Therefore, we must be careful about our actions and their corresponding effects." The stories of sublime beings are shared here to remind us that even the great arhats, bodhisattvas, and the Buddha appear to experience karmic effects, let alone we ordinary beings. Someone might argue, appearances do not inherently exist. However, samsara is a form of appearance. Feeling hungry is also a form of appearance, and experiencing suffering is likewise a form of appearance. In the presence of these appearances, the principle of cause and effect operates without question.
Some individuals often say, all phenomena are empty, so it is acceptable to commit wrongdoings.
Such an argument is outrageous. While the ultimate nature of all phenomena is emptiness, can we, as ordinary beings whose level of realization does not match that of Moggallana, transcend the principle of cause and effect? Even Moggallana himself could not escape the karmic consequences of his actions. Thus, we are all subject to the principle of cause and effect. During my visits to cities, I frequently encounter Buddhists blindly praising their gurus. They say to the gurus, "Ah, it must be acceptable if you commit wrongdoings. When you consume meat, you must be benefiting living beings. When you kill animals, you must be liberating them." However, it is not because of your beliefs that the guru's misdeeds can surpass the samsaric cycle. Therefore, each of us must be cautious about our actions. If we are not enlightened sublime beings and engage carelessly in wrongdoings, such as consuming meat, drinking alcohol, smoking, killing, stealing, engaging in sexual misconduct, and lying, ultimately, we will face the consequences we deserve. Aside from experiencing our karmic retribution, there is no other outcome. A wise person is deeply concerned about the karmic effects of negative actions, while a fool remains indifferent. This distinction separates the wise from the foolish. The Sutra of the Compendium of Essential Teaching states, "The foolish take pleasure in committing wrongdoings. The wise are always cautious. With true wisdom, they can perceive the perils and challenges that come with wrongdoings." It is akin to how a wise person understands that they must avoid committing a crime. Otherwise, they risk imprisonment. Unfortunately, many people today are so ignorant that they fail to recognize that wrongdoings lead to suffering. Due to their superficial understanding of the principle of cause and effect, some even knowingly engage in wrongful acts, resulting in dire consequences. It is essential to have conviction in the principle of cause and effect. Now, let's share the story of the son of Surabhibhadra, an Indian king. Nagarjuna, a great bodhisattva, brought many scriptures of the Prajnaparamita to the human realm from the Naga's palace and other realms, and he widely propagated the teachings among humans. This enraged the Mara king. In an attempt to harm Nagarjuna, the Mara king entered the womb of Surabhibhadra's wife and was born as the prince named Kumara Shaktiman. One day, Kumara Shaktiman's mother gifted him a beautiful, seamless silken robe. Rather than wear it immediately, the prince said, "I'll wear this on the day I inherit the kingdom and become king." His mother replied, "You'll never become king. For that to happen, your father, the king, would have to die. But your father and Nagarjuna share the same life force. As long as Nagarjuna lives, your father cannot die. And since Nagarjuna has power over his own lifespan, your father will never die. That's why many of your older brothers have already passed away without ever becoming king." The prince asked, "What can I do then?" His mother said, "Go to Nagarjuna and ask him for his head. He will agree because he is a bodhisattva, a being of great compassion. Other than this, I see no other way." So the prince went to Nagarjuna and asked for his head. Nagarjuna thought, in his past lives, Buddha Shakyamuni offered his head to others countless times. I should follow in the footsteps of the Buddha to subdue the Mara king, benefit future beings, and inspire Mahayana Buddhists. I should agree to make this offering. Then Nagarjuna said to the prince, "Go ahead, cut it off and take it." The prince picked up a sword and swung it at Nagarjuna's neck, but it was like slicing through air. Nothing happened. Nagarjuna explained, "Weapons can't hurt me, because 500 lifetimes ago, I completely purified myself of all the fully maturing effects of having used weapons. However, once, while cutting kusa grass, I accidentally killed an insect. The full effect of that action has not ended yet. So, if you use a blade of kusa grass, you can cut off my head." Then, the prince pulled a blade of kusa grass and used it to sever Nagarjuna's head, which fell to the ground. At that moment, his blood turned into milk, and Nagarjuna entered nirvana, saying, "Now I am leaving for the land of great bliss. In the future, I will return to this very body." The prince was afraid that Nagarjuna's head and body would merge again, so he carried the head far away. On the way, an ogress snatched the head from him. Later, because Nagarjuna had obtained the elixir of immortality, neither his head nor his body decayed, and eventually the two carts turned into two mountains. In the Treasury of Lives, biographies of Himalayan religious masters, Taranatha of the Jonang school mentioned that the two mountains used to be 4 leagues apart and are gradually coming closer together each year. Now they are only 1 league apart. Taranatha's guru had seen the two mountains. Later, shrines were built on the two mountains to commemorate Nagarjuna. When the great Jigme Punsak Rinpoche and I visited southern India, we passed through this area, where there was a huge reservoir. The two sides of the reservoir pointed toward two mountains, Nagarjuna's head and body respectively. We were short on time, so we didn't approach, merely observing the mountains from afar. I wonder how many people from Larangar have visited India. Many pilgrims go to the Vajra seat at Bodh Gaya and then return. Therefore, no matter what you face in life, such as someone striking you on the head with a stone and causing severe bleeding, it must be connected to your past actions. Recently, A Khenpo from Larangar visited India. On his way back, his car overturned, nearly killing him. Believing he was going to die, he repeatedly urged others, "Please do not blame the driver. If I die, it has nothing to do with him." This is truly the Buddhist way. If he were an ordinary person, he might have blamed the driver for poor driving. Especially in some less developed areas, negative and harmful behaviors and traditions abound. For example, even if a person has only a minor scratch, they will try their hardest to blame the driver. As Mahayanists, we should refrain from blaming others when we are hurt. Even if someone intentionally cuts us with a knife or strikes us with a club, we should recognize it as our own fault and think, "I must have done something to you in the past. It's fine. Thank you for helping me exhaust my karmic effects." In fact, whether one is a sublime being or an ordinary person, they will eventually have to experience karmic effects. Those past actions will not simply vanish without reason. Therefore, we should remember this when we encounter similar situations. However, some people disregard the principle of cause and effect. Even when it's nobody's fault but their own, they will still accuse others, revealing their lack of understanding of the principle of cause and effect. The Sutra of the Cause of Creation, taught by the Buddha, states, "Worldly people's actions, be they positive or negative, will eventually ripen on themselves, and they will never perish or disappear." So when we experience karmic results, we shouldn't blame others. Instead, we should acknowledge our own faults. If such extraordinary individuals still face the effects of their past actions, what chance do we ordinary beings have to break free from the endless cycle of suffering? We have been accumulating negative actions since time without beginning, wandering through the realms of samsara. If we continue to accumulate negative actions, even escaping the lower realms will be a challenge, let alone breaking free from samsara. This is similar to the fact that when a farmer plants a seed, whether bitter or sweet, it will eventually yield its corresponding fruit. Likewise, when we perform an action, whether helping or harming someone, the consequence will eventually arise. As stated in the Samyukta Agama, it's like when a seed is planted, the fruits will yield according to what is sown. Now that you are planting the seed of suffering, you will surely experience the suffering later. Therefore, positive and negative actions are the causes of happiness and suffering. However, many people are so ignorant that they don't know this at all. What a pity. Thus, as practitioners, we must first discern positive and negative actions by listening to and contemplating the Dharma. Then, we should make every effort to avoid even the tiniest wrongdoings and dedicate ourselves to performing good deeds, no matter how insignificant they may seem. For example, we can recite the Mani mantra once, turn a prayer wheel for 3 minutes, show reverence to a stupa by removing our hat, joining our palms together, prostrating, and circumambulating at once, or reflect on the Buddha's great qualities whenever possible. By engaging in these activities, we will gradually accumulate positive actions little by little, day by day, and eventually have the opportunity to attain realization. Many millionaires accumulate their wealth starting with modest amounts, placing great importance on even the smallest sums of money. Similarly, practitioners should emphasize even the tiniest actions, while those individuals lacking karmic merit often remain indifferent. If we do not make the effort with small actions, then each moment of negative action can lead to countless lifetimes in the lower realms. Never underestimate the impact of the smallest wrongdoing, such as speaking ill of others, harming animals, consuming alcohol, or smoking a cigarette, thinking that it cannot cause much harm. As Shantideva says, "If through the evil action of a single instant, I must spend an aeon in the hell of unrelenting pain, the evils in samsara stored from time without beginning, No need to say that they will keep me from the states of bliss. And, as it says in the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish, do not take lightly the impact of minor wrongdoings, thinking they are harmless and insignificant. Though a spark of fire may be tiny, it can set ablaze a mountain of hay. Recently, there were massive fires in the Siberian forests of eastern Russia, resulting in nearly 200 aircraft being reduced to ruins. Yet the source of the fire must have been quite small. Similarly, the negative actions we commit may seem insignificant at first glance, but they can lead to significant suffering for ourselves. Therefore, we must be mindful of the karmic effects of our good and bad actions. Some people commit misdeeds out of ignorance that has persisted since beginningless time. At times, their misdeeds stem from a lack of understanding of the principle of cause and effect. On other occasions, they may understand the principle, but due to strong defilements, cannot help but commit wrongdoing. Nevertheless, we must recognize that misdeeds are truly harmful, and we should make every effort to relinquish them. If you find it difficult to control your actions, at the very least, refrain from acting recklessly. Once you commit a misdeed, you must repent by reciting mantras repeatedly in the presence of your guru and the three jewels. A wise person would strive to avoid any misdeed, or, if they have inadvertently committed one, they will do their utmost to purify the action and eliminate its karmic effects so that it does not taint their mind stream. Overall, the view of the all-determining quality of actions is crucial for us. Many people often say, "This is my karmic result," or "This is my karma from a previous life." They are quite right. Everything we encounter, including the strange events that happen to us, and our joyful and painful experiences, is certainly related to our past actions. Once, a great master taught, "The world we live in is a world of karma. Since this life is very short and future lives are very long, we must do good things now for our future lives." His words carry profound meaning. I invite you to reflect carefully on the following questions. How long have you been living in this world? During your time here, have you taken the principle of cause and effect seriously? How do you plan to live for the rest of your life? You should answer these questions for yourselves.